The UES Horizon emerged from its jump at the edge of Frontier Sector 7, a region of space considered relatively safe but perfect for demonstrating military capabilities, and on the bridge, Captain Daniel Hayes watched as his sensors picked up the Kryn observation vessel maintaining a position 3,000 kilometers away. Close enough to monitor, but far enough to feel safe from any potential accidents. The Kryn ship is transmitting data back to their Senate observers. Lieutenant Karen White reported from her navigation station. They are scanning us with every sensor they have. And based on their communication patterns, I would say they're already making jokes about our ship's appearance. Daniel smiled slightly because he understood their mockery, knowing that the Horizon had been deliberately designed to look like an upgraded version of humanity's earlier fusion drive warships. All hard angles and practical construction, with none of the elegant curves that species like the Kryn favored in their vessel designs. Commander Paul Bennett stood near the engineering console, his fingers dancing across controls as he monitored the dark matter drive's power levels. And everything showed green, ready for activation. A moment they had all been training for throughout the past 2 years. Send a message to the Kryn vessel, Daniel ordered. Inform Senator Vexter that we are beginning our patrol demonstration and ask if his sensors are recording properly. Karen transmitted the message, and moments later, the reply came back dripping with condescension. Vexter stating that yes, his advanced Kryn sensors were more than capable of recording humanity's primitive patrol maneuvers. He also suggests we try not to get lost, Karen added with a slight smile. Apparently, he's concerned our navigation systems might fail. The bridge crew shared quiet amusement at this, all of them knowing what was about to happen. And Daniel felt a surge of pride in these men and women who had worked so hard to master technology that existed at the very edge of human understanding. Commander Bennett, Daniel said formally, you may activate the dark matter drive at your discretion. Paul's hands moved across his console with practiced precision, inputting the activation sequence that would fundamentally change how the Kryn viewed humanity. And throughout the ship, the drive's massive coils began to spin up, generating a field that would allow the Horizon to slip sideways into dark matter space. Drive activation in 10 seconds, Paul announced, his voice calm despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. All crew secure for phase transition. Daniel gripped his command chair as the countdown reached 0. And suddenly, the entire ship seemed to shift, not moving through space in any conventional sense, but rather sliding into a layer of reality that existed parallel to normal space. Invisible and untouchable to anyone operating in the conventional universe. Transition complete, Paul reported, and his voice carried a note of satisfaction. We are now operating in dark matter space. All systems functioning perfectly. Karen checked her navigation displays, which now showed readings that would have been impossible to interpret without specialized training, because dark matter space had its own rules, and its own geometry that bore only passing resemblance to the normal universe. The Kryn vessels. Sensors just lost us completely, she reported, with obvious pleasure. According to their scans, we simply ceased to exist. And they are transmitting emergency messages back to Senator Vexter. Daniel allowed himself a moment to savor this before issuing his next orders. Knowing that confusion would soon turn to shock and then to something approaching fear, bring us around to position Delta 4, he commanded, and prepare to drop markers at coordinates that will be visible to conventional sensors. The Horizon moved through dark matter space at speeds that made quantum displacement drives look slow by comparison. Because in this layer of reality, the ship could ignore most of the physical limitations that bound conventional vessels. And within seconds, they had traveled distances that would have taken the Kryn ship several minutes to cover. Dropping first marker, Karen announced. and a small beacon phased back into normal space, its transponder broadcasting humanity's identification codes on the Kryn observation vessel. Sensor officers stared in confusion at their displays as a human marker suddenly appeared 5,000 kilometers from the horizon's last known position. And before they could formulate a theory about how this was possible, a second marker appeared in a completely different direction, then a third. Then, a fourth Senator Vexter watched his screens with growing alarm. His forearms tensed as he tried to understand how a primitive human vessel could be in multiple locations simultaneously. And his crew's explanations made no sense, because their sensors insisted that nothing was moving through the space between marker positions. "This is impossible," Vexter growled. "Their ship cannot simply teleport, and our sensors would detect any known drive signature." But Captain Hayes was not finished with his demonstration, and he ordered Karen to bring the Horizon to a position directly beside the Kryn vessel. Still phased in dark matter space and completely invisible to their advanced sensors, "Target their shield emitters with dark matter torpedoes," Daniel commanded. "Set to disable only. We are not here to harm them." Just to prove a point, Paul armed the weapons, another piece of technology that the Kryn had never imagined possible. Because these torpedoes existed partially in dark matter space and partially in normal space, allowing them to pass through conventional shielding as if it were not even there. "Firing," Paul said quietly, and 4 torpedoes launched from the Horizon, phasing between realities as they traveled the short distance to their target on the Kryn ship. Alarms suddenly blared as their shield emitters overloaded and shut down, hit by weapons that their defensive systems had never even detected approaching. And Senator Vexter watched in disbelief as his tactical display showed shield failure across all sections simultaneously. "How?" he demanded of his crew. "How did they penetrate our shields without us detecting their weapons?" Before anyone could answer, 3 more Kryn vessels that had been shadowing the observation ship for additional security also lost their shields to invisible attacks. Their crews, equally baffled and increasingly frightened, Daniel decided it was time to make humanity's point absolutely clear. So he ordered Paul to phase the Horizon back into normal space, and the ship materialized directly between the 4 Kryn vessels, appearing from nowhere like a ghost becoming solid. "Open a communication channel to Senator Vexter," Daniel said. His voice carrying quiet authority. The Kryn senator's face appeared on the main view screen, his expression a mixture of shock, anger, and something that Daniel recognized as the beginning of genuine fear. "What have you done?" Vexter demanded, though his voice had lost much of its earlier arrogance. "What technology is this?" Daniel stood from his command chair and faced the screen directly, wanting the Kryn senator to see his expression as he explained. "What had just happened? While your species and others spent millennia perfecting conventional drives and weapons," Daniel said calmly, "humanity took a different approach. We studied the 85% of the universe that exists in dark matter space, and we learned how to operate there." He gestured to the bridge around him. "The UES Horizon can phase between normal space and dark matter space at will. When we are phased, your sensors cannot detect us. Your weapons cannot harm us, and we can move faster than your quantum drives by orders of magnitude." Vexter's scaled face had gone pale, a sign of shock in his species. "You have been hiding this technology while pretending to be primitive." "We did not pretend," Daniel replied. "We simply chose not to reveal everything while your Senate mocked us and dismissed our contributions. But Ambassador Carter felt it was time to show you what human innovation has achieved." He paused to let this sink in before delivering the final piece of information that would truly shake the Galactic Senate. "And Senator, you should know that the Horizon is not alone. Humanity has constructed 47 dark matter warships, and more are being built as we speak. The communication channel fell silent as Vexter absorbed this information. And Daniel could see the Kryn senator's mind racing through the implications of what he had just learned. "I must report this to the High Chancellor immediately," Vexter finally said. And all his earlier mockery had been replaced by genuine concern. "Please do," Daniel agreed. "And tell the Senate that humanity looks forward to discussing our role in galactic defense, now that everyone understands what we bring to the table." The Galactic Senate chamber stretched wide and tall, filled with representatives from 47 different species who had gathered to discuss the future of their shared space. And among them sat Ambassador Linda Carter of Earth, her hands folded calmly on the smooth desk before her, while voices rose and fell in a dozen different languages that the translation devices rendered into something she could understand. Senator Vexter of the Kryn Empire stood at the central podium, his forearms gesturing dramatically as he spoke about military readiness and the need for strong defenses along the outer territories. And his scaled face wore an expression that Linda had learned to recognize as arrogant pride mixed with barely concealed contempt for species he considered beneath his own. "The Kryn Empire offers 12 battle cruisers for the defense fleet," Vexter announced, his voice booming through the chamber. "Our quantum displacement drives can cross sectors in days. Our plasma cannons can pierce any shield, and our warriors have defended this Senate for 200 years. Murmurs of approval rippled through the assembled delegates. And High Chancellor Zoranis, who presided over the session from her elevated seat, nodded with obvious satisfaction at the Kryn offer. Linda waited patiently, knowing her turn would come. And she thought about the message she had received from Captain Daniel Hayes just that morning. A message that had made her smile despite the serious situation they all faced. "The human delegation wishes to speak," Zoranis said, though her tone suggested this was merely a formality rather than genuine interest in what Earth might contribute. Linda stood and walked to the podium, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes upon her, some curious but most dismissive, because humanity had only joined the Galactic Senate 15 years ago, and many of the older species still viewed them as newcomers who had barely mastered basic space travel. "Earth would like to contribute to the Outer Rim defense," Linda said clearly, her voice steady and professional, despite knowing what response awaited her words. Vexter laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together, and several other delegates joined in with their own species' versions of amusement. "Contribute what?" Vexter asked mockingly. "Your fusion drive ships that lumber through space like ancient cargo vessels? Your kinetic weapons that cannot penetrate modern shielding? The Kryn have ships that could destroy your entire fleet before your sensors even detected our approach." Linda did not react to the insult, having expected it, and she simply continued speaking as if the Kryn senator had not interrupted her at all. "We understand that our current fleet may seem inadequate by your standards," she said, choosing her words carefully. "However, humanity has been working on alternative approaches to space warfare, and we believe we can offer valuable support." "Alternative approaches?" Zoranis asked, and her tone made it clear she found the phrase amusing. "You have been in space for barely a century, while the rest of us have explored the stars for millennia. What could you possibly have developed that we have not already perfected?" Linda allowed herself a small smile, one that did not quite reach her eyes, and she thought about the facilities hidden on the dark side of Earth's moon where human engineers and scientists had labored in secret for nearly 8 years. "We prefer to demonstrate rather than explain," Linda replied. "If the Senate would permit us to conduct a simple patrol mission in Frontier Sector 7, we can show you what human innovation has achieved." Vexter waved one of his hands dismissively. "A waste of time. But if the humans wish to embarrass themselves, I see no harm in it. Perhaps watching their primitive vessels struggle will provide entertainment." Several delegates chuckled at this, and Zaranis nodded her agreement, clearly viewing this as a minor concession that would prove humanity's irrelevance once and for all. Very well, the High Chancellor said. Earth is granted permission to patrol Frontier Sector 7. And Senator Vexter, since you seem so certain of human inadequacy, perhaps you and your officers would like to observe their patrol firsthand? The Kryn Senator's eyes gleamed with malicious pleasure at this suggestion. I would be honored to witness this display, and my crew will document everything so the Senate can understand exactly how far behind humanity truly is. Linda returned to her seat, and as she sat down, she discreetly activated her communication device and sent a brief message to Captain Hayes. One that consisted of only 3 words but carried enormous weight. Proceed with demonstration. She knew that within hours, the entire Galactic Senate would learn that underestimating humanity had been a terrible mistake. And she felt a surge of pride knowing that Daniel and his crew were ready to show these arrogant species exactly what humans could accomplish when properly motivated. The session continued, with other matters of trade and territory. But Linda barely heard any of it. Her mind focused instead on what was about to happen in Frontier Sector 7, where Captain Daniel Hayes commanded the UES Horizon, a ship that looked conventional enough on the outside, but contained technology that would revolutionize warfare across the entire galaxy back on Earth. Admiral Greg Morrison sat in Fleet Command reviewing the latest reports from the lunar facilities, and he felt both excitement and apprehension about what was coming. Because once humanity revealed their dark matter warships, everything would change, and there would be no going back to the comfortable obscurity they had enjoyed while secretly developing their breakthrough. Commander Paul Bennett ran final checks on the Horizon's dark matter drive, a massive piece of equipment that took up 3 entire decks and operated on principles that would baffle even the most advanced galactic scientists. Because while other species had mapped the visible universe in minute detail, humanity had focused on the 85% of reality that existed in dark matter space, invisible and unexplored until human physicists had found a way to interact with it. Lieutenant Karen White reviewed navigation protocols at her station, knowing that once they activated the drive, she would be piloting through a layer of space that conventional sensors could not detect, and where the normal rules of physics bent in strange and useful ways. Captain Daniel Hayes stood on his bridge, looking at his crew, all of them aware that they were about to make history and change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. And he thought about how far they had come from those early days, when other species had laughed at Earth's first clumsy attempts at interstellar travel. All stations report ready, he said calmly. We have our orders from Ambassador Carter, and I know every one of you will make humanity proud. So let us show the Galactic Senate what humans can do when they stop trying to copy others and start innovating on their own terms. His crew responded with quiet determination. No dramatic speeches or emotional displays, just professional readiness and confidence in their training and their ship. And as the Horizon moved toward its assigned patrol coordinates, Daniel knew that Senator Vexter and his Kryn observers were in for the shock of their lives. The Epsilon system transformed from a scene of destruction into a coordinated battlefield as 47 human dark matter warships phased into reality and engaged the hostile forces with precision that came from months of training and preparation. And Captain Daniel Hayes watched from the damaged horizon as his fellow captains executed the battle plan that Admiral Morrison had developed for exactly this type of scenario. The Heidum-Zistenise fleet is spreading into attack formation beta, Lieutenant Karen White reported, her voice carrying relief at finally having reinforcements. And Admiral Morrison is directing fire to protect the remaining colonies while forcing hostile vessels into normal space. Commander Paul Bennett worked frantically at his engineering station, attempting to restore the Horizon's phase drive after the enemy weapon had knocked them offline. "I have crews working on the primary phase coils," he said. "But we are looking at 30 minutes minimum before we can phase again." Daniel accepted this, knowing that his ship had already done its part by destroying the enemy command vessel, and he focused instead on coordinating with the rest of the fleet through conventional communication systems since the Horizon was stuck in normal Space Commander. Julie Sanders and the U-Shadow continued to phase in and out of reality, each appearance marked by torpedo launches that destabilized enemy vessels and forced them into confrontations with the main human fleet. And her tactics were proving devastatingly effective. "The hostile forces are attempting to retreat," Karen announced. "But our fleet is maintaining pursuit, and we have destroyed or disabled approximately 20 enemy vessels so far on the bridge of the U-East Defender." Captain Ryan Cole commanded a wing of dark matter warships that had formed a defensive perimeter around the surviving colonies, ensuring that no hostile vessel could reach the civilian populations. And his tactical updates showed that the enemy was indeed attempting to disengage from the battle. Admiral Greg Morrison coordinated everything from his flagship, the U-East Vanguard, a dark matter warship specifically designed as a command vessel with enhanced communication systems and strategic analysis capabilities. And his calm voice filled the fleet channel with orders that kept the human forces organized despite the chaos of combat. "All vessels." "This is Morrison," the Admiral said. "Do not let them escape. We need to understand who they are and where they came from. Disable their drives, but avoid destroying them completely if possible." Daniel understood the reasoning behind this order, because while humanity had proven it could fight these mysterious attackers, they still knew nothing about their origins or motivations. And capturing intact vessels would provide crucial intelligence. Professor Alan Drake's voice suddenly came through on a science channel that Daniel had been monitoring. "Captain Hayes, I have been analyzing the data from your engagement with their command vessel, and I believe I have discovered something important about their phase technology." "Go ahead, Professor," Daniel replied, grateful for any insights that might help win this battle. "Their phase generators operate on a different principle than ours," Drake explained rapidly. "They are using brute force energy generation to partially shift into dark matter space. But the process is inherently unstable because they have not solved the quantum harmonics problem that took us 3 years to crack." Paul looked up from his repairs with sudden interest. "Which means we can disrupt their phase states with a properly tuned energy pulse." "Exactly," Drake confirmed. "I am uploading the specifications now. If we broadcast on these specific frequencies, we can force every hostile vessel in range back into normal space simultaneously." Daniel immediately forwarded this information to Admiral Morrison, who grasped its significance instantly and ordered the fleet to implement Drake's solution. "All vessels configure your communications arrays according to Professor Drake's specifications." Morrison commanded, "On my mark, we broadcast on all designated frequencies. And when these hostiles are forced into normal space, conventional galactic forces can join the engagement." The human fleet worked quickly, each ship adjusting its systems to generate the pulse that Drake had designed. And Daniel felt pride in humanity's ability to adapt and innovate even in the middle of combat. "This is High Chancellor Zoranis to Human Fleet." A new voice joined the channel. "We have brought every available galactic defense vessel to the Epsilon system. Our conventional forces stand ready to assist once your technology makes the enemy vulnerable." Daniel pulled up his tactical display and saw that indeed hundreds of galactic ships had gathered at the edge of the system. Everything from Kryn battlecruisers to Deltan science vessels retrofitted with weapons, all of them waiting for a chance to defend their colonies. "All ships ready," Morrison announced after receiving confirmations from across the fleet. "Broadcasting pulse in 3, 2, 1. Mark." The human warships simultaneously generated a cascading wave of energy on frequencies that resonated with the hostile vessel's unstable phase generators. And the effect was immediate and dramatic, as every enemy ship still in the system was forcibly shunted back into normal space, their flickering hulls suddenly becoming solid and visible to conventional sensors. "Galactic forces, you are cleared to engage," Morrison transmitted. "Targets are now vulnerable to all conventional weapons." The galactic fleet surged forward, and Daniel watched as species that had recently mocked humanity's capabilities now fought alongside human forces as equals, their combined firepower overwhelming the hostile vessels that had seemed invincible just hours earlier. Senator Vexter commanded one of the Kryn battle groups, and his earlier arrogance had been completely replaced by professional military competence as he coordinated his vessels' attacks with human dark matter ships providing targeting data. "The enemy is completely disabled," Karen reported with satisfaction. "We have destroyed 18 vessels, disabled 23 others, and the remaining forces are attempting to surrender." Daniel felt the tension that had gripped him since the beginning of the crisis finally start to ease. "Transmit their surrender to Admiral Morrison and maintain our position until we receive further orders." Throughout the Epsilon system, hostile vessels shut down their weapons and allowed themselves to be boarded by combined human and galactic forces. And the mystery of who they were and why they had attacked would soon be solved several hours later. Daniel stood in a briefing room aboard the Vanguard alongside Admiral Morrison, Commander Sanders, and several other human officers, listening as intelligence analysts presented their initial findings about the defeated enemy. "They call themselves the Void Collective," the intelligence officer explained. "A species that discovered dark matter principles approximately 5 years ago, and they believed it gave them the right to conquer and subjugate other species." Admiral Morrison studied the data with a grim expression. 5 years and they still had not solved the basic stability problems that we addressed in our first year of development, which suggests they are powerful but not as scientifically advanced as they appeared. Their captured personnel claim they chose to attack galactic colonies because they believed the Senate species were weak and would surrender rather than fight. The officer continued. "They had no idea that humanity possessed dark matter technology until we engaged them at Haven Station." Daniel felt a cold satisfaction at this. "So they learned the same lesson that the Galactic Senate learned, that underestimating humanity is a dangerous mistake." Morrison nodded. "And more importantly, they learned that the galaxy is defended not just by conventional forces, but by a species willing to innovate and fight for what is right." Ambassador Linda Carter joined them via holographic communication from the Senate chambers, where she had been coordinating the political response to the crisis. "The Galactic Senate has just finished an emergency session," she reported, "and High Chancellor Zoranis has formally thanked humanity for its defense of the colonies." "Just thanks?" Daniel asked with slight amusement. Linda smiled. "Hardly. The Senate has voted to make humanity the primary military authority for all dark matter defense systems, and they are requesting that we share our technology with other species, though only for defensive purposes and under human supervision." Admiral Morrison considered this carefully. "That is a significant responsibility, and it will require us to maintain our technological advantage while helping others defend themselves, which is exactly why Professor Drake has proposed a compromise," Linda said. "We provide conventional forces with dark matter detection systems and defensive shields that can resist phase weapons, but we retain exclusive control over offensive dark matter capabilities." Daniel saw the wisdom in this approach. "So we give the galaxy the tools to defend itself without creating dozens of potential rivals who might use the technology aggressively." "Precisely," Linda confirmed. "And the Senate has agreed to these terms, which means humanity effectively becomes the guardians of dark matter space." protecting all species from threats like the Void Collective. In the following weeks, human engineers worked alongside scientists from every galactic species to install defensive systems on stations and ships throughout known space. And Professor Drake found himself training thousands of alien technicians in the basics of dark matter detection. His patient teaching style proving as effective with aliens as Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon watching his tactical display fill with red markers that represented hostile vessels. And each marker indicated an enemy ship that was systematically destroying colonies that had stood for centuries, leaving nothing but debris fields and silent communication channels behind. "We are receiving Admiral Morrison's battle plan," Lieutenant Karen White reported from her station. "The full dark matter fleet is converging on this sector, ETA 35 minutes. And we are ordered to engage immediately to slow the enemy advance." Daniel studied the tactical situation, noting that 12 hostile vessels were currently attacking a mining colony called Haven Station, which housed approximately 15,000 civilians. And the station's distress calls painted a grim picture of an enemy that showed no mercy and accepted no surrender. "Commander Bennett," Daniel said calmly despite the urgency of the situation, "I need maximum speed to Haven Station, and prepare our dark matter torpedoes for combat deployment." Paul's hands flew across his engineering console. "Drive power at maximum, we will reach Haven in 8 minutes. And all weapon systems are armed and ready." The Horizon phased fully into dark matter space and accelerated to speeds that would have been impossible in normal space. And through the viewport, Daniel could see the strange rippling effect to characterize this layer of reality, as if they were moving through an ocean of invisible energy. "Captain," Karen said suddenly, her voice carrying concern, "I am detecting something unusual about these hostile vessels. Their phase signatures are unstable compared to ours, like they are flickering between realities rather than maintaining a stable transition." Daniel filed this information away as potentially important, knowing that any weakness in the enemy's technology could be exploited. And he watched the distance to Haven Station counting down rapidly when they emerged from their jump. The scene before them was chaos, as 12 sleek black vessels surrounded the mining station, their hulls seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. And as Daniel watched, one of the hostile ships fired a weapon that phased through Haven's shields and tore a massive section out of the station's habitat ring. "Civilian casualties are mounting," Karen reported quietly. "The station is evacuating to emergency shelters, but many sections have already been breached." Daniel felt anger rising in his chest, a cold fury at whoever was piloting these vessels and targeting defenseless civilians. "Target the nearest hostile vessel and fire all forward torpedoes. I want that ship disabled immediately." The Horizon's weapons launched dark matter torpedoes that existed in multiple realities simultaneously, and they struck the enemy vessel before it could react. But instead of disabling it, the torpedoes seemed to destabilize the ship's phase state, causing it to flicker violently between normal space and dark matter space. "The hostile vessel is losing phase coherence," Paul reported with satisfaction. "It is being forced back into normal space and cannot rephase." Sure enough, the enemy ship solidified into normal reality, and suddenly it became visible to Haven Station's conventional weapons, which immediately opened fire with every defensive system still operational. "All ships," Daniel broadcast on the fleet channel, "target enemy phase generators with torpedoes. We can force them into normal space where they become vulnerable." The battle intensified as the Horizon engaged 2 more hostile vessels, each one requiring multiple torpedo hits before their unstable phase technology failed completely. And Daniel realized that while these enemies had discovered dark matter principles, their implementation was crude and fragile compared to humanity's refined Approach Commander Julie Sanders arrived in the sector commanding the U.S. Shadow, another dark matter warship that immediately joined the fight. And together the two human vessels began systematically forcing enemy ships back into normal space where conventional galactic defense forces could finally engage them. Effectively, this is Haven Station Command. A voice came through the communication channel. We confirm hostile vessels are now vulnerable to our weapons, and we are registering hits. Repeat. We are registering hits for the first time since the attack began. Daniel allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before refocusing on the tactical situation. Because while they had saved Haven Station, reports indicated that attacks were ongoing across multiple systems, and the human dark matter fleet was spread thin trying to respond to all of them. Captain Hayes, Admiral Morrison's voice came through on a secure channel. I need you and Commander Sanders to proceed to the Epsilon system immediately. We are detecting a concentration of hostile vessels there, possibly their command ship or staging area. Daniel acknowledged the order and signaled Julie on the Shadow to form up for the jump. Knowing that this battle was far from over, and as the Horizon phased back into dark matter space for the transit, he gathered his senior officers for a quick briefing. Whatever these hostiles are, he told them, they discovered dark matter technology but did not perfect it. Their phase generators are unstable, and our torpedoes can exploit that weakness. But I want everyone to remember that they are still extremely dangerous, especially to conventional forces. Karen pulled up data from the engagement. Based on their attack patterns and the fact that they are targeting colonies rather than military installations, I believe they are attempting to spread terror and chaos rather than achieving specific strategic objectives, or they are testing our response capabilities, Paul suggested. Seeing how quickly we can deploy and how effective our defenses are, Daniel nodded. Both theories make sense, and either way, we need to find their staging area and deal with whatever command structure is coordinating these attacks. The Horizon and Shadow emerged near the Epsilon system to find a scene that made Daniel's earlier anger seem small by comparison, because this was not a raid or a skirmish, but rather a full-scale assault involving at least 30 hostile vessels that were systematically destroying everything in the system. My God, Karen whispered. They have already destroyed 3 orbital stations, and 2 colony planets are under bombardment. Daniel forced himself to remain calm and analytical, despite the horror of what he was witnessing. Scan for any vessel that appears to be coordinating the others and prepare for a complex engagement. We are outnumbered 15-1. Julie's voice came through from the Shadow. I see it, Captain. There's a larger vessel at the edge of the system, approximately twice the size of the attack ships, and it is transmitting continuous signals to all the others. That is our target, Daniel confirmed. We take out their command ship, and these attacks lose coordination. Paul, I need you to configure our torpedoes for maximum yield. And Karen, plot us a course that keeps us phased until the last possible moment. The 2 human warships moved through dark matter space, invisible to the hostile forces that continued their destructive work. And as they approached the enemy command vessel, Daniel could see it more clearly through the Horizon's specialized sensors. It was massive, easily 3 times the size of the Horizon, with the same light-absorbing hull as the smaller vessels, and its phase signature flickered even more dramatically than the attack ships, suggesting that maintaining something that large in partial phase required enormous and unstable power generation. We are in range, Karen reported. But Captain, I am detecting energy readings from that ship that do not match anything in our database. It is possible they have weapons we have not yet encountered. Daniel made his decision quickly. We cannot wait for backup. That ship is coordinating the destruction of 2 entire colonies. Julie, coordinate your attack with ours. We hit them simultaneously from different angles. Both ships aligned their approaches. And at Daniel's signal, they phased back into normal space and fired every torpedo they had. Dozens of dark matter weapons converging on the hostile command vessel from two directions at once. The enemy ship's defenses activated. Energy barriers that Daniel had never seen before flashing into existence. But the torpedoes were designed to phase through conventional shields, and most of them reached their target, impacting the command vessel's hull and destabilizing its phase generators catastrophically. Their phase system is collapsing. Paul shouted over the sound of alarms. But Captain, they are channeling all their power into some kind of weapon. Daniel saw it too late to avoid. A beam of energy that existed partially in dark matter space. Something humanity had not yet developed, and it struck the horizon's port side, causing massive damage and forcing the ship back into normal space involuntarily. Hull breach on decks 4 through 6. Karen reported urgently. And our phase drive is offline. We are stuck in normal space. The hostile command vessel was dying. Its phase generators overloading and tearing the ship apart from within. But it had succeeded in damaging the horizon. And now the smaller attack ships were converging on the human warship's position. No longer targeting colonies, but instead focused on destroying the vessel that had killed their command ship. Evasive maneuvers, Daniel ordered. And get me a damage report on our weapon systems. Paul worked frantically at his console. Torpedo tubes 3 and 4 are still operational, but we have lost primary targeting. Switching to manual aiming, Julie's voice came through, steady despite the desperate situation. The Galactic Senate chamber had never been so quiet. And Ambassador Linda Carter stood at the central podium watching dozens of species. Representatives stare at the holographic display that showed footage from Senator Vexter's observation vessel. Footage that documented the impossible feat they had all just witnessed. High Chancellor Zoranis sat in her elevated seat with an expression that Linda had never seen before, something between shock and anger, mixed with a calculation that suggested the Chancellor was already trying to determine how this changed the balance of power in the galaxy. This recording must be falsified, declared Councillor Threnak of the Peaceful Delton Collective, his voice carrying more hope than conviction. No species could develop such technology in secret, especially not one as young as humanity. Linda remained calm at the podium, having prepared for exactly this response. And she gestured to one of her aides who uploaded additional data to the chamber's display systems. These are confirmed sensor readings from 4 separate Kryn vessels. She said clearly, all of them recorded the same events. And I believe Senator Vexter himself can attest to the authenticity of what occurred. The Kryn senator sat in his delegation section, looking diminished somehow. His forearms held close to his body in a posture that his species adopted when feeling defensive or uncertain. The footage is real, Vexter admitted, and his voice lacked any of its usual bombast. The human vessel disappeared from our sensors completely, appeared in multiple locations simultaneously, and disabled our shields with weapons we could not detect. And when their captain explained their technology, I realized we have been operating in ignorance. While humanity explored an entirely different aspect of space, Zoranis leaned forward in her seat, her eyes fixed on Linda with an intensity that would have intimidated most ambassadors. You have been members of this Senate for 15 years, Ambassador Carter. 15 years during which you allowed us to believe you were technologically inferior. Why did you hide this development? Linda had anticipated this question as well, and she met the Chancellor's gaze without flinching. We did not hide our research. We simply chose not to discuss it while it was still theoretical. And I should point out that many species in this chamber have their own classified military projects that they do not share with others. But this is not a minor improvement to existing technology. Zoranis countered. This fundamentally changes the nature of space warfare. And you built 47 warships without anyone noticing? 47 that are operational, Linda corrected. We have 12 more in final construction stages. And our lunar facilities can produce approximately one new vessel every 3 months. The chamber erupted in voices. Some angry, some frightened, all of them demanding explanations or expressing outrage. And Linda waited patiently for the noise to die down before continuing. "If I may," she said, and gradually the chamber quieted. "I would like Professor Alan Drake to explain the basic principles of dark matter drive technology so that everyone understands what humanity has achieved." A holographic image appeared beside Linda, showing Professor Drake in his laboratory back on Earth. And the elderly scientist adjusted his glasses before beginning his explanation. Dark matter comprises approximately 85% of the universe's mass, he said in the patient tone of someone who had spent decades teaching complex concepts. But it does not interact with normal matter through electromagnetic forces, which means we cannot see it or touch it through conventional means. He displayed a diagram showing 2 layers of space overlapping. However, dark matter does interact through gravity and through weak nuclear forces. And about 9 years ago, human researchers discovered a way to generate fields that allow matter to transition between normal space and what we call dark matter space. Counselor Threnak raised his hand like a student seeking permission to speak. But if dark matter does not interact with normal matter, how does your ship avoid simply falling through planets or stars? Drake smiled, clearly pleased with the question. An excellent observation, and the answer is that our ships exist in both spaces simultaneously when phased, maintaining gravitational interaction while becoming effectively invisible and intangible to electromagnetic-based sensors and weapons. He continued his explanation, describing how dark matter drives could achieve faster than light travel by exploiting the different geometries of dark matter space, and how weapons could be designed to phase between realities, allowing them to bypass conventional shielding. Zornis listened with growing concern, and when Drake finished his presentation, she turned her attention back to Linda with a question that carried enormous weight. "Ambassador Carter," the Chancellor said slowly, "I must ask directly, does humanity intend to use this technological advantage to conquer or dominate other species?" The entire chamber fell silent again, and Linda understood that her answer in this moment would shape humanity's relationship with the Galactic Senate for generations to come. "No," she said simply and firmly. "Humanity seeks cooperation, not conquest. And we revealed our dark matter technology because we believe the galaxy faces threats that will require all of us working together." "What threats?" asked a representative from one of the minor species that Linda recognized as coming from the Galactic Rim territories. Before Linda could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the Senate chamber, and Zeranis received an urgent communication that made her already pale complexion turn almost white. "We are receiving distress signals from colonies in the outer sectors," the Chancellor announced, her voice tight with stress. "Multiple systems report attacks by unknown hostile forces, and our defense fleets are unable to engage the enemy effectively." She looked directly at Linda. "The attacking vessels appear to be partially phased, similar to your dark matter ships, and our weapons pass through them without causing damage." A chill ran through the chamber as the implications became clear, and Senator Vexter stood abruptly, his earlier hostility toward humanity forgotten in the face of this new crisis. "How many ships does this enemy have?" he demanded. Zornis consulted her data streams. "Reports are confused, but at least 30 vessels have been confirmed across 7 different systems, and they are systematically destroying our colonies and outposts." Linda felt her heart racing because this was the nightmare scenario that Admiral Morrison had warned about. Another species discovering dark matter technology and using it for aggression. And she activated her communication device to contact Earth Fleet Command Admiral Morrison. She said urgently, "We have a situation. Hostile forces using dark matter phase technology are attacking outer colonies, and the Galactic Senate's conventional forces cannot engage them." Morrison's response came immediately, his voice carrying the calm authority of a career military officer facing combat. "Understood, Ambassador. Captain Hayes and the Horizon are already in that region, and I am dispatching our full dark matter fleet to intercept. ETA to the nearest attack site is approximately 40 minutes. Linda read this information to the chamber, and Zoranis made a decision that she clearly found difficult but necessary. Ambassador Carter, the Chancellor said formally, on behalf of the Galactic Senate, I request that humanity deploy its dark matter warships to defend our colonies. I propose that we immediately grant Earth full status in this Senate with all rights and privileges that such status entails." The chamber erupted in debate again, with some species objecting to what they saw as coercion, while others recognized the desperate need for help. But Linda waited for the vote that she knew would come when the chaos finally settled and Zoranis called for a formal vote on humanity's status. The result was overwhelming. 39 species in favor, only 3 opposed, and 5 abstaining. "It is decided," Zoranis declared. "Humanity is granted full Senate status effective immediately, and we entrust the defense against this new threat to your dark matter fleet." Linda nodded gravely, understanding the responsibility that had just been placed on human shoulders. "Admiral Morrison is coordinating our response, and I can assure this Senate that humanity will not fail you." But even as she spoke these confident words, Linda wondered about the enemy they now faced. Because if another species had discovered dark matter technology independently, the coming battle would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen.